Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Thank you for being here with us tonight and welcome to our new series of More Than Just Money, where all your curiosity will be answered. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Nurul Iman and I'm currently an investor relations and data analyst in Capital Boost. I'm also in the research department of IFSG covering Sharia and finance. Islamic Finance at Singapore, or IFSG, is a community of scholars, finance professionals, and students in Islamic finance. What started as a WhatsApp group has now become a society in the making with a long-term goal to serve the Singaporean community through Islamic finance. Tonight, I am honored to share this platform with the head of Islamic Banking of Maybank Singapore, Mr. Zulkarnien. Mr. Zulkarnien is the head of Islamic Banking and Senior Vice President at Maybank Singapore since 2019, armed with 11 years of experience in the Islamic finance pillars at Maybank. Mr. Zulkarnien oversees the business strategy, development, and adoption of Islamic banking products and services. Mr. Zulz also holds a master's in business administration, specializing in finance and a bachelor degree in real estate management from University of Malaya, Malaysia. With over 15 years of professional experience, he has held various roles involving strategic planning, transformation initiatives, product development and structuring, portfolios and business management across retail, SMEs, commercial, corporate in domestic and regional markets. Since joining Maybank Group, his leadership and contribution have helped the bank to achieve healthy financial results and win several global awards. Welcome, Mr. Zulkarnien. Mr. Zul, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, shukran.
Shukran. All right, let's dive to the topic for today. All right, so let's talk about the often cited issue when it comes to Islamic banking in Singapore. There is too small a market for Islamic banking to flourish. On the other hand, if we look at Indonesia, which has the largest Muslim population in the world, Sharia banking is relatively small compared to the Malaysia or the Gulf states. In fact, according to OJK, less than 10% of the country's banking assets are held by Sharia banks. So, Mr. Zul, how do we reconcile between the two seemingly opposite so that we can really pinpoint how Islamic banking can flourish in Singapore? Mr. Zul, please.
First and foremost, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good evening. Thanks to IFSG on behalf of Maybank Singapore. We would like to thank you for inviting us. This is the second year. And we are grateful to be here in this platform to share and learn, share and care with all. And I personally am still learning. Thanks for the long and energetic introduction, Man. I'm still learning and I believe everybody does. I always believe that we learn more when we share together. So back to your first question, how do we flourish Islamic finance in Singapore? Why Malaysia and Indonesia, as you quoted, these two neighboring countries are far more advanced than us? Simple answer to that is because Malaysia and Indonesia, Islamic finance is one of the key national agenda and key agenda for many financial institutions. Broadly, Islamic finance is geographical driven. It was started and far advanced in the Muslim countries. So Singapore is a conventional jurisdiction. It is no surprises because any other conventional jurisdiction, they are also trying. But I can tell you from my personal observation and experience, I think we did better in Singapore. Now, how could we add value and spur vibrance of Islamic finance in Singapore? There are two parts. Islamic finance also an industry or sector by itself. We are trying our level best to find the equilibrium between the supply and the supply and the demand. Now, from supply side, my personal view, it has to be regulatory focus on Islamic finance. What do I mean by that? I hope that the regulators can formulate and integrate Islamic finance into Singapore financial service transformation plan, right? And in terms of product innovation, so this is the roles of the Islamic finance player in Singapore, where we have to think ahead of comparative advantage, the keywords here. What do I mean by this is basically, if you are coming up with just another product of conventional equivalent, yes, of course, you pass Sharia requirements and Sharia list. But what is basically the why to the customer of this Sharia product? So the product has to be innovative. The product has to be sexier. The product has to be enticing. The product has to be better off. At the very least, has to be at par. Then it makes sense for customer to subscribe. Now, from supply side, the third point here is industry engagement. So see, in the two neighboring countries, Malaysia and Indonesia, there are Association of Islamic Bank, Association of Islamic Financial Institution, where ideas, challenges has been discussed thoroughly on how can we shape the industry moving forward. So I do hope the more industry engagement between Islamic financial institution in Singapore. As you know, as many of our audience aware as well, that there are 3 Malaysian-based banks here in Singapore doing Islamic finance. There are also Middle Eastern bank based here in Singapore doing wholesale Islamic segment. There are also Bruneian Islamic bank doing business here in Singapore. So we do talk with each other on how could we partner and work together to shape the Islamic finance industry in Singapore. Right? On the demand side, this is the very most important. You see, personally, I think most of our financial institutions in Singapore having operation of Islamic finance, they have quite sufficient product to offer. The problem is still low awareness about Islamic finance among the market players. Islamic finance, it is still not in the mainstream industry. From corporate point of view, many of them still not aware about what is Islamic finance. They have zero knowledge. This is through my personal experience and background for the last 3 years in Singapore. For SMEs, regardless whether they are in halal industry or any other industry, they have zero knowledge. Because again, on the landscape of the conventional jurisdiction. So what we request from these market players, mainstream industries, middle to small industries, to open their doors, to give opportunities to Islamic finance providers in Singapore to share with them what are the values. The topic is very interesting. The other side of the coin side.
Yeah.
What if I tell you, all coins and notes, the value of both sides is equivalent. If it is $1, it will $1. What if I tell you on one side representing conventional finance $1, but the other side it is also $1, but it is extra. I will explain to you later. Some of Islamic financial product we embed elements that are valuable and beneficial to customer. So many are still not aware about this. I hope I answer your first question.
Yes, Mr. Zul, thank you so much, because here we understand that we do have supply in Singapore, but the demand, the another side of it, it's not yet at the point where we need to know that we need to create more awareness, as mentioned by Mr. Zul. Hence, often articles will try to explain banking as getting around. So maybe Mr. Zul, why the demand or why the understanding of Islamic finance is not here. Hence, we are here today, okay, to create this awareness, because articles try to explain that Islamic banking, okay, is getting around charging interest on loans through profit sharing arrangements or acting as intermediaries, buying an asset like a car on behalf of the client with an agreed repayment schedule. Do you think this expresses the true spirit of Islamic banking? In your own words, how would you present Islamic banking to the layman on the streets?
Thanks for the long questions. If I heard it correctly, this is all about misconception about Islamic finance getting around, but eventually will charge interest. Am I right?
Yeah.
My person is wrong and accurate. If you look at from just one perspective or one part, which is the calculation for this case, it will not tell you the true picture of Islamic finance, how it works. So let me answer you from two perspectives. from my macro perspective, financial services as a whole is a well-regulated industry. It's all about trust, and reputation is all our highest asset. We can't afford to lose it. Every single product, when we want to offer and put on our shelf, we got to really check a long list of checklists. And the ultimate approver, it is at the central bank level. And for Sharia compliant proposition, me and team are business owner of Islamic Banking as well as product manufacturer. We propose our solution, but who is going to approve it? Internally, we do have risk committee. Internally, we have to pass our compliance committee. We have to pass internally many committees. Then we escalate the proposal to our Sharia committee. Who are our Sharia committee? They are independent Sharia scholars who are academically certified, professionally certified, and well-versed and experienced in Islamic finance. Then what happened after Sharia committee approval? We got to file and launch the central bank. So that is from macro level. In short, every single product that we offer to public, it has to be guaranteed, endorsed by many committees, internally as well as regulators. From micro level, every single product, is modeled by different Sharia structure. Sharia underlying structure is the fundamental and underlying of Islamic finance. Every contract has to be also endorsed by a respective committee, which I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Of car financing, which quoted in the question, we are using Ijara. Do you know that here in Singapore, we are the only provider, Maybank is the only provider for Islamic auto loan. And I can tell you our balance sheet size is substantial. The point I want to make here, we have been offering for many years. Alhamdulillah, so far, touch wood, there's no Sharia default in that case. Okay. This product that we have been offered to Singaporean individual as well as businesses to opt our vehicle financing, we have to go through Central Bank of Singapore, Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS,
Yes.
Ijara guideline. We have to also go through, and we are also adopting Bank Negara Malaysia Ijara policy document. And you know how many pages this Bank Negara Ijara policy document? 60 over pages. So these two guidelines stipulate clearly the obligations, responsibility, operationalization of all parties involved in order for us to offer car financing. So the question, the perception about the car financing, getting around of eventually charge interest is totally wrong. The most important thing, interest is the fundamental of conventional, but it is not Islamic finance. What is fundamental for Islamic finance is the Sharia contract, which eventually we will derive this calculation of the profit charge based on the Sharia contract. I will answer your second question.
It's a very nice way you put it, the perspective way, mashallah. So after understanding the true nature and the form of Islamic banking, which is not just focused on interest, the follow-up question to the above, there are still skeptics. In another word, there are some doubtful understanding that are still lingering among the Muslim population who believe that Islamic banking is just the same as conventional banking. All right. So how, Mr. Zul, would you share to this group of people that Islamic banking is indeed different or a better form of banking?
I've explained earlier.
Yeah.
On micro level.
Yes.
Macro level and micro level.
So
let me just keep it simple for this question because the same misconception.
Yeah.
Let me just pose a question. When you sick, who do you consult? Doctors, right?
Yeah, doctors.
Because they are certified for medical reason, right? They are professional in medical fields, right?
And we trust them.
When you have a problem, yeah, you trust them, right?
Yes.
So, assuming you have a problem, for this case, yes, these people, this segment have problem with regard to Islamic finance, fundamental structure. then perhaps, like I mentioned earlier, the Sharia scholars is the best reliable source for us to consult. Again, in short, if you can put trust on medical doctors for your medical situation, do also trust our Sharia scholars because they are academically certified, professionally certified. They have spent a lot of their time, resources in doing research, reviewing any proposal before launch, after launch, in order, as well as Sharia banking business model, in order for an Islamic bank to conduct Sharia compliant proposition. I hope the trust from this segment on Sharia scholars.
Yes, exactly, Mr. Zul. I hope from this explanation just now, we can pass the message. We can create the awareness of the understanding of Islamic banking better for the Muslims out there to understand that. I mean, Sharia compliant Islamic banking is more than just interest. It goes through layers of layers, and especially the Sharia compliant. The Sharia community people, okay, which are certified, which are academically understanding in these issues that are actually in the position to put in when we are talking about Islamic banking. Next, when it comes to
you are absolutely right. You are absolutely right. I just want to add on. This is important. I'm not an ustad, but this is what I remember. I got it from our head of Sharia management to answer this misconception about this certain segment, which they have argument and queries about fundamental and technicality about Islamic finance. This is important reminder to me and this segment as well as the rest. If you are unable to apply completely, do not leave it completely. I think you heard about this hadith before.
yeah.
It is Islamic finance, maybe to certain of the to this segment is not perfect. But remember, Islamic finance is one of the ways to get out from riba. I hope enough message segment.
Yes,
and I'm not that worried. This segment is just a little fraction of major population. Many have believed in this ethical Islamic finance bank, but we still have to address. They are also equally important. Thanks, Iman. Back to you. Sorry.
Sorry. I mean, to add upon that also, we know that Islam is a way of life, and Islamic finance is part of the Islamic teachings. Hence, definitely we should put the importance in it. Definitely, right, Mr. Zul? So next,
You're right.
Yeah. So next, when it comes to Islamic banking in Singapore, what is the strategy of Maybank? We know for the fact that Islamic banking players are very limited in Singapore, and they have engaged in strategic partnerships with trade chambers and religious organizations. They also widen their service offerings such as Zakat and Wakaf online, and have created initiatives for halal channel in China. So what is Maybank Islamic approach in Singapore?
I'm grateful because I had experience in Malaysia and the company sent me to Indonesia and now in Singapore. So a little experience I have, let me share and to answer your question about Maybank strategy in Singapore. In Malaysia, I think 7-8 years back, we launched Islamic First Strategy in Malaysia. Islamic First Strategy. Then we import this strategy, we launched Sharia First Strategy in Indonesia, at Maybank Indonesia. What does this Islamic First Strategy means in these two countries? So basically, we offer Islamic finance product and services at default to all our customers. Only when the customer asks, do you have conventional? Then we put on table. So we are giving them alternative solution. So the Islamic First Strategy in Malaysia and Sharia First Strategy in Indonesia has so far been great, have been gaining momentum. Now in Singapore, the strategy for Maybank, if I could share with you, that we launched Islamic niche strategy. What does it mean by this Islamic niche strategy? It has to be on targeted segment. Why so? Because the landscape itself, like I mentioned earlier, conventional jurisdiction. And I think it's more effective for us to go targeted. And we got to also respect the perception and the character of the profile of our customer. And two categories of this Islamic niche strategy that we are eyeing on, which I also believe other Islamic financial institutions may adopt the same. The first strategy, the first category is basically the Muslim segment. So we have about 200,000 household Muslim population in Singapore, out of 700,000 or 800,000 in totality. But if his household is about 200,000. Now, for the natural gravity segment Muslim, while for the companies, those companies involving in halal industry, Sharia compliant industry, we think these halal industry market players can be associated with Islamic finance. But we got to put extra effort and commitment, because there is no compulsion for these halal market players in Singapore or any other countries, mandatory for them to subscribe Islamic finance. So we are trying our level best to grow together with these halal market players in Singapore via Islamic solutions. Now, the second segment that we are approaching and trying our best to having conversation with them are the neutral segment. Who are the neutral segment? These are non-Muslim individuals who believe in ethical banking, who believe in sustainability banking, which these values are common in Islamic finance, as well as companies who wants to grow together with Islamic finance. So I hope I answer your question, these two categories, and who are we eyeing on for us to grow their business to meet their financial objective using Sharia compliant.
All right, so thank you so much, Mr. So after understanding the two strategy that is being mentioned, the Muslim segment and also the neutral segment, which is under the Islamic niche strategy, all right, now let's move on to a hypothetical question. As we know, there are 3 of Singapore's banks are also in Malaysia, and the 2 of these banks offer Islamic banking services products there. Should one of these banks decide one day to offer Islamic banking service in Singapore, how would you welcome, or how would Maybank welcome this competition?
Well, the more the merrier. Because what? Eventually, the benefit is basically to customer. Yes, because sometimes it's at the expense of bank. But we have to lose something to gain something. Industry is small. So, like it or not, we want to grow and shape this industry together with big boys. So what can, if the big boys come into the game, of course, there'll be more new innovative Islamic finance solution. There'll be better experience for our customer in terms of Sharia proposition. There'll be perhaps maybe lower cost of doing financials, businesses, financial product and services for customer. So why not?
So,
in fact, for your information, we actually work with some of these local banks for some of the deals that we can have a club or syndication.
And competition is kind of advantage. There, you can see the advantage. We can see the positive sides in competing when there's competitions, right? So follow-up question.
Yeah, you're right.
So the follow-up question, Mr. Zul, with the new issuance of digital banking license in Singapore and the burgeoning, in other words, the beginning to grow of new Islamic challenger banks all over the world, such as Manzil and Rizik, what customer principle or pain points that will they be addressing, or they just seeing a market that is not being served by the traditional banks?
Well, again, I mentioned financial services is well regulated. I believe this digital license, which recently issued, it will penetrate to the wider bankable and unbankable segment. So it's good for the population at large. And via this digital license, cost of doing business, I hope, will become cheaper. And eventually the pricing for any financial facilities or financial services, fees and charges become cheaper. So again, it will benefit to perhaps not just one segment, but all segments via this technology platform. And we will expand, of course, digital license, digital platform to benefit of Islamic finance as a whole. we should leverage in this platform as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Zul. Before that, let us welcome again to all our audience that just joined us here with us today on More Than Just Money series, where all your curiosity will be answered. We have Mr. Zul, the head of Islamic Banking, Maybank Singapore, sharing with us the true form, the true nature of Islamic awareness. And inshallah, this will create awareness and will have the skepticals of Islamic banking. Okay, we clear off the skepticals and we understand better about Islamic finance. Inshallah, next, okay, getting back to some facts, Singapore is a surprising performer when it comes to Global Islamic Economy Indicator Index, ranking 15th overall and being placed in the top 10 for 4 out of 6 sectors. Unfortunately, it is still scored way below average in Islamic finance. Do you think, Mr. Zul, Singapore has the right ingredients to also be in the top 10 for Islamic finance, since it is also a global financial hub and has scored in many other country rankings?
Yeah, maybe I don't have to. Absolutely, I personally think there is opportunity for Islamic finance to accelerate and grow faster in Singapore. Leveraging on Singapore strength. I don't have to mention about the strength Singapore has. Singapore is the most competitive economy. It has been financial center for Asia Pacific. It is opportunity for Islamic finance to come in as a whole. Now, Singapore also is leading country in terms of green facilities. So this is where Islamic green financing, Islamic green sukuk can play a role. Singapore is the FX center of Asia Pacific. This is opportunity for Islamic finance, Islamic global markets, instruments, and tools that, yes, of course, we have just a plain vanilla product so far, but this is where the area that we can tap on, Islamic global market, to tap on Singapore strength as a FX center. Trading hub. I don't have to mention about the statistics Singapore has, as well as a free trade agreement with countries around the world. And halal solutions, where halal product and services are also part of the tradings. This is where the halal trades solutions that Islamic Finance Singapore can provide. Don't go far. Malaysia-Singapore corridor, Singapore-Indonesia corridor, Singapore-Brunei corridor. These 3 countries are exchanging goods and services, right, in terms of halal product. So this is where we want to bridge. This is where Islamic finance can bridge the two between the geographies in terms of specific goods and services. But again, as I mentioned earlier, the demand side and the supply side, it has to be structural transformation to integrate Islamic finance into the mainstream industry, which currently it is not. It is based on a best effort basis, mostly done by the players. But it has to be collectively by Islamic finance players, by regulators, as well as from the demand side. The Singapore traders, the Singapore industry players have to open the doors and listen, how could this Islamic solution help them in order for both to go parallel and grow together? I hope I answer your question, Iman.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Zul. As we know also, Maybank recently inked an Islamic green financing deal with Royal Group amounting to 250 million. Correct, Mr. Zul?
Yes, you're right.
It is also said to be the first such loan in the hospitality sector. And with the rising interest in environmental social governance, how did Maybank marry Sharia compliance and this green initiative? How do we address concern that isn't hospitality very much linked to entertainment where alcohol is plenty? So how can it be Sharia compliant?
Well, I think you all are aware, ladies and gentlemen, that the 3 components of sustainability, the E, S, and G, environment, the social impact, and the governance. But do you know that the social impact and the governance part, these 2 components are already embedded in Islamic finance? These are the beauty
social
of
and governance, is it? Mr. Zul?
Yeah, the social impact, we do have wakaf, we do have zakat. It's a
Uh-huh.
must and compulsory for all, right? Now,
Yes.
for governance side, one of the main principles of Islamic finance, in fairness, is transparency. You can't overcharge. There's no such of hidden costs and fees. These
Mm-hmm.
are all two components generally already embedded in Islamic finance. But this is where the environmental component, where we are trying to embrace sustainability by embedding environmental impact component into Islamic finance solution. There are overlap of ESG and Islamic finance because both carry the same principle. So at Maybank, the Royal Group deal that we have successfully concluded, amounting to 100 million, it is not self-claim of the world first Islamic green financing for hospitality sector. We are guided for the E component into the documentation and agreement with the client. We are guided by green loan principle and sustainability linked loan principle. These two principles are set by the Association of Market Players globally. So we not just put this is green loan, this is Islamic green loan. No, we don't do that. There are a set of regulations that the bank has to ensure the client has to adhere to the green principle. So we lend Sharia term financing with the green element that become Islamic green financing. Now, still argument or question hotel at glance to some of the segments believe is non-Sharia compliant.
Mm-hmm.
Am I part of the question? End of the part of the question.
Yes.
Hotel is Sharia non-compliant. It is wrong.
Hospitality lah, yeah. The services
It is it is inaccurate because recently at the industry level
mm-hmm.
has been excluded from Sharia non-compliant list on the basis of, I give you one example. How many room and a hotel will have as compared to the F&B?
Definitely the rooms are more than the FMBs.
Precisely. Then you can imagine about the income generated from the rooms, right?
Rooms, yes.
Hotel also has facilities like banquet, right?
Yes.
Multi-purpose hall, and they are Sharia compliant. So Sharia scholars are looking this from Sharia compliant income, which is from the accommodation and other facilities that the hotel will earn, vis-a-vis as opposed to the non-halal restaurant within the hotel. Now, Sharia scholars has collectively agreed in the context in Malaysia, KLSC Sharia counters BSKL has excluded hotel in the negative fees. Now, do you know similarly in Singapore, I'm not sure whether you are aware about FTSE Singapore Sharia Index. There are about 40 companies in Singapore listed in FTSE Sharia Index. In FTSE Sharia Index, which is listed as one of the SGX index, you take a look at the business ratio, take a look at the financial ratio and business activity. The business activity do not list down hotel as one of the Sharia non-compliant. So at the industry level, hotel is Sharia compliant. At Maybank, we adopt the same from industry. And this has been endorsed by central bank as well as our Sharia scholars. Hope that answers.
Basically, Mr. Zul, this is just out of curiosity. It again depends on Sharia index, right? On how we look into when we say we adhere to Sharia compliance in a certain company, banks, and etc. Correct?
You're right. You're right. So there are three categories. Acceptable list. What is acceptable list? Industry or sector deemed Sharia compliant from Sharia scholars' point of view. These are like infrastructure sector, energy sector, telecommunication sector, services sector. The second category is the mixed sectors. Mixed sectors, for example, a conglomerate who have mix of other businesses. It could be Sharia compliant businesses as well as non-Sharia compliant. This mixed list is for us to further table to Sharia committee whether when we look at the financial composition as well as the business activity and ratio now and moving forward are acceptable from Sharia point of view or not. Now, the third category is totally negative list. It's totally outright reject. Those are like conventional bank, those are dealing with the tobacco, gambling, which is totally against with Islamic finance principle. Am I making myself clear?
Very
on the three
clear.
categories?
Yes. Thank you so much.
But that is for companies, either micro or SME or commercial or corporates or conglomerates. That is for companies. The Sharia is applicable for non-individual. For individual, Islamic finance welcome everybody. That's the beautiful part. Okay?
All right.
Great.
So clear and detailed. So much knowledge. I'm taking a lot from you, Mr. Zul. MashaAllah. Okay.
I'm still learning, like I mentioned earlier. Thanks.
Okay.
Next question, please.
There have been expression by Islamic finance players and academics that Islamic banking does not reflect the intention of Islamic finance pioneers, since there is a focus on debt-based financing compared to equity-based financing, causing the Islamic banks to look very much like the conventional counterparts. Do you think the arguments have any basis? And before that, Mr. Zul, could you please explain to our audience, okay, the term debt-based financing and equity-based financing in brief? Because I'm sure many might heard the term, but they might be unsure of the meaning. So before we address the main question, let's just define it briefly.
Right. So the differences between the debt-based and the equity-based. Let's go with the equity-based partnership. So equity-based in Sharia terminology is musyarakah mutalakisah, right? It's a partnership where the bank is not just a lender. The bank puts some of his capital into the venture. So the bank is putting additional, not just the credit risk. It's the bank risk into the partnership. For example, a company A wanting to have a business entrepreneurship, inviting the bank to be part of the company. So the bank ownership of that company. That is basically equity partnership.
All right.
Now, from the debt-based point of view, the bank lend to the company on commodity murabaha or tawaruk Sharia structure. It's purely credit risk to the bank. The credit risk of the borrower. So in this context of debt-based, bank as a lender. While for equity partnership, we have a credit risk. The bank has a credit risk. The bank also have this business risk. I hope the two definition is clear. Now, we can do both. We can offer both. In fact, we are doing both. But why we are doing so much more on the debt base, which is to make to some of the segment, this is just a replica of conventional equivalent. The perception and the understanding is strong. Why? Because doing the equity partnership using musyarakah mutanakisah or a debt-based financing, commodity murabaha, there are additional capital charge the bank has to top up and allocate for equity partnership. Why? Because there is additional risk the bank has to participate. So the root cause here is the capital charge. What is capital charge? Every single dollar lent to customer, certain portion required by the regulators for the bank to put aside. If $1 lent for the debt-based facility, maybe just 10% of the capital charge required by the bank to set aside. Now, for the equity partnership, if $1 I lend to equity partnership, you know how much capital charge the bank has to put aside?
Higher?
It's $1.
Oh, the same.
It's 100%. Yeah. So 10% capital charge for that equity, 100% capital charge for equity partnership. That is the cost to the bank. When the bank has to exert more cost, the bank has to also translate into pricing. If you are the customer, if I offer you both that equity, that facility with a cost of $1, with another proposal of equity with a cost of $1.20, which one you choose? Which one you choose? The cheaper one.
Yeah, the cheaper one, the equity. Based.
So, as Islamic finance is growing and evolving, we have to strike the balance of giving the best proposal to the market players, to either individuals or companies, because the principle is the Islamic finance has to have comparative advantage. It has to be better off. It has to be at par with conventional equivalent or better off. If Islamic finance product and services are much more expensive than the conventional equivalent, you think customer will opt for it, subscribe it?
No.
Most likely not, right?
Yeah.
I hope that is the logic and the reason why most Islamic financial institutions are growing toward the debt base.
Towards the equity-based financing.
Regardless both debt base or equity base, Islamic finance principle is model to support the economy. I hope I answered your question.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Zul. Next, it is a known rule that Islamic bank cannot charge interest, cannot charge riba, the most common known word riba, or charge a penalty to defaulters. And with COVID-19 affecting businesses and households, how do Islamic banks manage this possibility of high non-performing loans and even defaulters? And what happens to defaulters?
Okay, let me correct your statement. We do charge late payment charges, but that is not for income purpose. We do charge. Islamic bank, we do charge late payment charges because it is at negligence of customer. We have given them the schedule which we have agreed up front. They have to obey and adhere to the guidelines and the schedules. But if they fail, right, there are payment charges by Islamic bank. But the late payment charges, the beauty of Islamic finance, we do charge late payment charges similar like conventional, but we don't compound the unpaid outstanding, the undue profit. So technically, mathematically, the late payment charges by Islamic finance is much lower than the conventional late payment charges. Why so? Because the principle of Islamic finance, you don't burden customers who are having the difficulty. So it is at the expense of the bank. Now, why we still charge late payment charges? Because it requires the bank to put extra resources and its cost to the bank to call customer for them to pay, to advise customer to restructure. So to commensurate with the cost that the bank has to put additionally, so the customer has to bear it.
Okay. Mr. Zul, I have a question. When you say the LPC, late payment charge, right? Is it same to penalty? When some banks say, okay, we will charge penalty, is it the same concept when you talk about Islamic banking, penalty and LPC, late payment charge? Or we only have late payment charge but no penalties? Or how do you see penalty and late payment?
By definition, it's the same.
Okay, yes.
Penalty is something that you have to do this because of negligence of any parties, either bank or the customer, right? Find out more information from Central Bank late payment charges for Islamic banking, as well as Bank Negara Malaysia late payment charges. There are two types of Islamic bank late payment charges. The Garama part, and there's another part, Garama and I forgot the name. The two part, Garama and this part. The bank, out of this LPC, for example, I charge you $1 because of you pay late. Actually, $1 is not solely 100% to the bank. there are certain part of this $1 that the Bank of Islamic Bank has to give to charitable organization.
Yes.
It's another beauty part.
Yes.
Yeah. I think ta'wid, if I recall correctly.
Ta'wid, yes, ta'wid.
Garama, yeah, garama and ta'wid.
Ta'wid and gharama.
Yeah. Garama is something that we have to give to charitable organization. It is not our right. It is not the bank right. Ta'wid is something, the cost that the bank has to put because of the negligence of the customer. It is fairness. This go back to the principle of Islamic finance that we have to promote fairness. No party has to take any advantage to another, on another.
So means the customers that come to Islamic banks like Maybank specifically, they are going to actually sign a contract that has mentioned clearly about the late payment and gharama and penalties, right, Mr. Zul? It's already clearly stated
You
in
are
the
right.
right?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, financial services is well-regulated industry. Have a chance to take a look at the Sharia legal agreement. Many of the publics, they will only sign agreement because they find lazy to understand the legal language and it's quite thick. The reason why legal documentation are thick because the legal documentation has to ensure every interest of every party is taken care of. And for Sharia contract, we literally stipulate every single component. How do we derive this? It's based on the Sharia contract. So again, the Sharia contract is the fundamental. Then we derive its legal documentation. We explain to customer, what does it mean? What's the implication? Whatever we have akad and agreed upfront, along the tenure until maturity of the facility, the bank, the Islamic bank, or any conventional bank doing Islamic services, we can't and we are unable to charge any hidden cost, any additional. It has to be mutually agreed. That's the beauty part of Islamic finance. Transparency and fairness for all.
Yes, definitely. All right. So, Mr. Zul, according to Islamic Finance Development Report in 2019, research papers in Islamic banking were the focus of many academics and professionals. Even beating research papers in Islamic finance and CSR, of course, the subtopics may be diverse, but how do you see this progress in the research translate to actual banking practices? Is it just theoretical as to the ideal state of the Islamic banks?
We value every ideas, opinion, research, feedback from all stakeholders. Now, congressional finance has been many years, started earlier than us. Islamic finance industry, in particularly Singapore, if I recall correctly, 1998, it was started. So the Islamic finance industry player, we are actively looking for ideas for us to innovate. Like I mentioned earlier, the strategy is basically not to just replicate whatever conventional equivalent has. We are not filling up the product menu. No, that is not the intention. The game changer for Islamic finance industry, in especially Singapore and other conventional jurisdiction geographies, is the comparative advantage. You don't have to have a full menu. You have to have key solution for us to entice not just Muslim, but the bigger audience of non-Muslim, the mainstream industry. Because to many of people, as well as the players or in industry, the very first question they will ask, what's the advantage? Why Islamic finance? To have a solid answer to the why. They don't care about you have experience, they don't care about your capability. They will zoom straight to the product itself. So this is where Islamic finance have to educate people at the street as well as outside movements. The values that we have, not just for the immediate benefit to the customer, the medium term, long term to the customer themselves, as well as to the environment that we are embracing.
Mr. Zul? Can you hear us? All right, let's wait for Mr. Zul connection to revive back. All right, so in this topic, Mr. Zul has covered a lot of things, okay, and one of it is the differences, okay, when we talk about Islam, when we talk about how, all right, Mr. Zul is here back with us. Okay, Mr. Zul.
Yes, I'm back. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. Okay.
So sorry about that.
Okay. So you are mentioning about who we should actually ask about when it comes to this matter, Islamic finance matter, right?
Yeah. Maybe we can move to next question.
Okay, all right. Mr. Zul, because of the time limit, okay, we'll go to the questions from the public.
Sure.
All right. So we have questions. Let's start with this, okay. Okay, the first question, Islamic banking system and Islamic bank or financial organization ownership are going to non-Muslim day by day. How can we solve the issue?
It's an open market. Those who have capital, those who have extra capital will subscribe more. It is their benefit and advantage. So those who have small capital, regardless what races you are, if you can't participate at a bigger role, play some small role. It's an open market. I will answer the question next.
All right. So next, since we need to take heavy loans to buy a house, especially in Singapore, does Maqasid Sharia take precedence over the possibility of riba? Mrs. Zul? All right, I will be looking into Slido while waiting for Mr. Zul to settle the technical issue, connection issue. All right, so while waiting for Mr. Zul to come back and join us, let me just look at the questions from the public. Thank you so much for posting the questions on Slido.
Sorry, I'm back. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure whether my line or other line.
No worries, Mr. Zul. Okay, are you there? Is everything all right?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
Is it my line? Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, so we are talking about huge loan, about taking a house. So how do we go about with that?
Yeah, there's no Islamic home loan in Singapore. I'm not an ustad, but I think this is darurat. So perhaps maybe the only option available is conventional home loan. But please doa, we are trying our level best. We are cooking this product. And we are talking with especially CPF and HDB to allow this product to be on shelf.
Inshallah. Okay. We also have question that says, how should Islamic finance sector improve their model to stay competitive?
Many times I mentioned earlier, comparative advantage. The product has to be better off. And we have to keep innovating as well as to adopt technology. That's the way forward. Like it or not.
All right. So is Singapore government, okay, still have interest as before about promoting Islamic finance and banking in Singapore?
It has to be collective. It's not just regulator. It has to be regulator, Islamic finance player, the supply side. It has to be as well from demand side. the market players has to open their doors for Islamic finance. For us to have conversation, more marketing element component has to be down the street. The issue of awareness is still there. So we have to accelerate this. It's a collective effort by all.
One more question. Okay, is interest from other conventional banks permissible for us to use? I heard from an insurance group who said he was an ustad that is okay due to inflation.
I don't quite understand this question. Can you repeat?
It means to take riba from other bank. Okay, I will like restructure the question if I understand. Basically, to take riba from conventional bank is okay because riba in conventional banks are due to inflation. So let me just read the question again. Is interest from other conventional banks permissible for us to use? Because, okay, there are a group of people that say it's okay due to inflation. The riba is due to inflation. So is it okay to take riba from conventional banks because they see riba as inflation, due to inflation? Riba is riba, right?
First and foremost, this fellow is still banking with conventional. Now, I'm not here to say yes or wrong. But like I mentioned earlier, which the hadith mentioned, if you are not able to apply completely, do not leave it completely. In Singapore, few banks are offering Islamic solution. So directly, indirectly, you have both options on table. It's your choice. It's your decision to opt either conventional or Islamic, right?
Okay.
Unless there is only one option of conventional equivalent, perhaps maybe Darura came into the picture. I may be wrong.
Okay, so this is another question, one interesting question. Okay, how does a youth venture into Islamic finance, especially investment, other than starting a Sharia compliant bank account? And how does Maybank ICV account? Is it how can a youth join? Very, very passionate to know.
Yeah, we make it available online. You don't have to come to our branches for ICV and Arehla. You can open online via my info. You can do it now. You can do it from your laptop. Now, if you have extra money, of course, saving account is just transaction account. But that is the basic product for you to start. Like I mentioned, Islamic finance industry has to start from you. Let's have this basic product. At least you have a feel of Islamic product. So start with conventional Islamic saving account first. Now, if you have extra money for you to put for other alternative investment, which is also Sharia compliant, Maybank, we also launched Global Sukuk Income Fund, which can give you indicative return of 4%. That's quite huge for the current regime of a low profit rate, right?
Yes.
So 4% annual return, which is Sharia compliant. So the question is why not? But again, it's depending on the risk and return appetite that you want and when. You can start with Global Sukuk Income Fund, which the initial placement is just 1,000. And we are also cooking another Islamic balance fund. Inshallah, we will soon launch it. So these are two alternative investment solutions currently Maybank are also offering. I'm not sure about other providers, but I think not that many that I can think of about Islamic investment. But normal basic banking product, yes, I think quite a few banks has it.
All right, Mr. Zul, this one more question, last question, all right?
Yes,
are Sharia banks really
you are running out of time,
free from riba? And if they do, how do they gain their profits? So basically, the understanding of bank is always that they gain profit from riba. So if they have this idea, how does Islamic banking then actually gain profits? This has the most likes, like the most questioned.
So how does Islamic bank profit?
Because we are free from riba, right? Yeah.
Okay. So income, there are two types. There are fund-based income and fee-based income. Now, fund-based income is basically the financing facilities that we lend out to our customer. The fee-based is basically the financial services, like the ATM withdrawal, the credit card fees and charges or not. Now, these two are the two components of revenue that an Islamic bank derives. How do we then getting income from the fund base? Now, we mathematically we are calculating the profit using the similar method of either fixed profit, fixed calculation or the fixed rate or floating rate, because Islamic bank all over the world are applying the similar benchmark rate, the benchmark rate that is issued by the central bank. We are adopting the similar benchmark rate, and we are also charging the all-in effective rate. So how do we calculate this? Basically, regardless, the method are the same. But principally, how do we derive this calculation is based on the Sharia contract. Okay, so fund-based income, fee-based income.
Fund and fee-based income. All right, that's all, Mr. Zul. Thank you so much, Mr. Zul. I believe that there are a lot more you would like to share with us, but time is not on our side, and we have learned a lot. Thank you so much. Hence, do look out on IFSG space for the next episode for More Than Just Money series, where all your curiosity will be answered. So once again, thank you to the participants, and see you again. Good night and stay safe. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you all. Assalamualaikum.